Okay, so I linked a video that's of my former professor, Todd Lowry, who's a professor at Drury, and he's a painting professor and a professor, and he has a video about mapping that's very good. It's fairly long, it's about an hour, it's about 50 minutes to an hour long. So that's a great resource. Check that out. This is basically just, I'm going to walk you through in the lecture style that I like to do when for my asynchronous things, where you're getting used to these at this point probably, where I'm here in the corner talking you through things, but we have slides, we have images for you to follow along, so you can then go back and use those as reference images when you're working at home. I think that I found with my students that if they have slides they have access to reference in terms of techniques, it's helpful for some people for different kinds of learning styles. So I just want to have that as an option for you as well. So this is something I usually talk through and demonstrate in class in front of the class. So this is the first time I'm attempting it in this way where I am showing you images and talking over them for this technique. So let's see how it goes. Sighting, measuring, and mapping. Okay, all of the images I'm using are not my hands. They are images of a dude's hands online that worked pretty well. Basically, he had a video. This is not Todd. This is a different random dude. He has a video where he's going through this process, and I just paused it and took stills from that, and then I'm going to talk you through in my teaching style and my words and my speak what's happening, but these are not my hands. The number one giveaway to that is his pencil is not sharpened properly, right? He did not sharpen his pencil with an X-Acto knife, which is what we do for drawing. Okay, so random internet guys, hands are going to help us talk through sighting, measuring, and mapping. Okay, so first of all, when you're sighting, you can use anything that is a straight edge, basically. I most often use my pencil. You can also use a dowel rod, just a plain dowel rod. When I was an undergrad, that is what I was taught. That's how I was taught to do sighting, and I don't think that's a bad method. I think that that works very well. You can make little marks on your dowel rod. I generally use a pencil. So that is one of the reasons that I chose this fella's hands, because he also likes to use a pencil for sighting. I think it works just as well as a dowel rod. You can also use a pen if you like. Some stick-like thing that is straight and fairly narrow will work. Okay, so when you are sighting and you have your pencil or your dowel rod or whatever in your hand, you want to make sure that you're looking at it with your arm fully extended, okay? If you have your arm here and then here and then here and then here, you're not going to get the same measurement every time because you're changing how far your control, your measuring device is from your eyes. So that's one thing that's important. This goes back to the idea of drawing with your whole arm too. We want to get our whole body involved. So you either need to be sitting up straight or preferably standing at an easel when you are drawing this way, and you want to extend your arm all the way out every time you make a measurement. And you want to look at it down the length of your arm, and sometimes with one eye is good. But you want to be consistent in how far away you are standing or sitting from whatever you're drawing, and in having your arm fully extended so it's the same measurement every time. Otherwise, this will not work. So that is thing one. Thing two is you want to hold it in such a way that you have your thumb against the pencil or dowel rod like we see here, because you can slide your thumb up and down to create different measurements, okay? So you want to be holding it in your hand the way we see in this image, and you want your arm fully extended, and you want to be planted in the same place. Okay, we have those steps down. Great. So what we're going to do, we're going to walk through this very simple still life and how to draw it. So in the still life example, we have a green vase and we have a ball of twine, okay? So what you want to do is get a basis for measurement when we're figuring out what we are measuring here. Okay, so you're going to look around and see what a thing that's a basis for measurement can be. In this particular still life, measuring that ball of twine and using that as your basis for measurement initially is probably a pretty good place to start because it's going to be fairly consistent. So we know by measuring that the width of our ball of twine is a constant that we can see. Okay, so we know how to use sighting, how we're going to measure. The next thing to do is to figure out where we're going to place the edges of our objects, how we are going to ground our composition, okay? So we want to make just a line, a reference line, that's going to be the top of the tallest object in our still life. Okay, that's our vase. So we have, on the right here, you can see we have this line. Then we want to drop a line down that's going to be the center of that object for a reference line. And then we want to place a line at the bottom that's going to be the base, the base edge of that object. And that line is going to help be our standard of measurement for the whole piece, okay? So the next thing we want to do is establish right about where the halfway point is on this object, okay? Once we've figured that out, we want to measure halfway down where we think that falls, where the halfway point is on the object, and we want to make sure that we mark the halfway point correspondingly on our paper. Okay, so we're sighting with our pencil in the still life. We're measuring as we're sighting, and then when we translate those measurements onto the two-dimensional plane, onto the surface of the drawing paper, that is called mapping. So we sight, we measure, we translate the measurement, we map. Those are the steps. Okay, so then we're going to pencil in on our reference lines over on our composition. We're going to pencil in that halfway point that's going to be another point of reference. The first part is just we're making sight lines, we're making reference points, kind of the skeleton on which we're going to build our drawing. The next thing, and you don't have to do this, I like to do this, is just put a little dot in the center where those reference lines cross, because that's another helpful point of reference to have. Then we're going to measure from that dot out to the outer edge at the middle of our vase. And you're going to hold your thumb there, and that's going to be a measuring point that we're then going to take from sighting in the still life over to the paper to map it. So we sight, we measure, then we map. Okay? We want to look at how this unit of measurement relates in other places on our still life. Okay? So we can see that from the midway point, from the dot down to the bottom, halfway up is about this size, and is halfway up from the bottom is the same size as extending out to the edge over here. But when we go up to that halfway line, it's a little more. So when we're taking this unit of measurement here and applying it to the lower half of the vase, we can see that from the bottom of the vase to that midway point dot is a little more than 2 of this unit of the side. Okay, so this measurement that we're holding with the pencil, it's 2, and then, well, it's a little less than 2 of that measurement. You see how that's lining up? Okay, so now we're going to go over to the pencil, to the paper with the pencil, and we're like, okay, we know this measurement is this much, so we're going to mark that now. So you hold your measuring pencil over, and you make a line measuring how far out the edges of the vase extend. And you do that on either side. You make a little dot, and then you're going to extend that line all the way down so that you have a reference that's a reference rectangle that the entire vase fits inside. Okay, so that is the first complete piece of our mapping. Okay, the next thing that we want to do First of all, we can look at this and we observe the red line at the top is the same distance as the midway line. So the top line and the middle line are the same width. So the next line that we need to figure out is the baseline of the vase. So we come back over to our still life and we start looking at what the measurement is at the base. So we hold our pencil out and we measure how long that base is, the base part of the vase. We get an idea of that. Then we come back over to our paper and we mark where those baselines are, okay? So you're just taking this measurement directly from the still life as you map it there and hold it with your thumb over to the paper and making marks to record it. Okay, so there it is recorded. Now we want to go back to our vase, and another thing that we want to measure is how far from our center dot is the deepest part of the curve in the neck of the vase. So see where it goes kind of concave on either side? We need to mark where that measurement is. We need to mark where that change happens and where the point where it curves in the most is. So we go back to our center dot, our point of reference, and we take that measurement from the center dot to the most pronounced part of that concave curve in the neck of the vase. And then we also want to measure from where the most concave part is, how great the distance is from that point to the top of the vase. So we make sure we're keeping everything proportional all the way up and down the vase. Then we come back over to our drawing and we want to add to our map. So we're adding this information to our map. This is the line, this is the point where the most concave part of the neck is. We want to make a mark there, then go ahead and draw a line all the way across so that we know where that is. And then we're going to start looking at where, just another set of reference lines in terms of where that lines up with the bottom of the vase. Okay, so now that we've dropped these lines in, we can put dots there that mark where the most extreme concave points in the neck are on our drawing, okay? So you can see how we're just building out each reference and building it out with the proportion of the whole piece in mind. Okay, now we need to start thinking about the bottom of the vase and the ball of twine. Okay, so we want to measure where the top of that ball of twine comes. So we're here measuring and then we're taking it over to the map and we're going to make a mark. And then we're going to extend that line all the way across to where it intersects with the top of the ball of twine. Then we need to look at the height. So we're going to sight and measure the height of the ball of twine. And we just want to see if it's the same width. And it appears that it is the same width as it is tall. So we have that information now. And we can take that across, check it, measure it, sight it and measure it. And then we take that information over to our drawing paper where we are going to put this information into our map. So we're drawing in the parameters of the box that the twine fits in, and there we have a box next to our rectangle where the vase is. Now, it's important to note that the ball of twine overlaps the vase, so you don't want to set it just completely next to our triangle or our rectangle that is the vase. We want to set it so it will overlap, and you'll see that the bottom of the ball of twine extends down further than the bottom of the vase. So you want to make sure that you see how the box that it's going to go in, our reference box on the map, is overlapping the rectangle and extends down further towards the bottom of the page. And then you can go ahead and just halfway through put a couple of lines so that we have a center point of reference for our ball of twine as well, okay? Okay, now another thing you can use sighting for is not just the height and the width, you can also measure the angle at which dynamic aspects, dynamic lines within the drawing happen. So here we're going to use our pencil to sight the angle from the top line, the top lip of the vase, to the most concave point in the neck of the vase. So you're going to hold your pencil out with your arm fully extended, as we've been doing the whole time, and look at that angle, and then you're going to translate that angle onto your map, and you want to go from the top edge, the top line on our rectangle map of the vase, and draw the curved line in to that dot that we made earlier when we measured what the distance is to where that most concave point comes in. Okay, so you're just going to drop that in like that. Then you'll drop in the other one and continue that line down. So you see how much easier this is now that we have everything mapped out proportionally. It's kind of like just connecting the dots to get the contour line for our basic shapes. And then you just round them out a little and adjust them. Okay, so this is just some little adjustments. It's not a straight line at the bottom, it's slightly curved, so we want to make a little adjustment at the baseline there. Now we can go over and draw the exterior contour of our ball. So within the square that you've drawn, it's pretty easy to draw in the angles, the curves there to create the ball of twine, to create the sphere. And then we're going to go in and just kind of refine the exterior lines. So you can see that we're darkening the exterior lines, reinforcing those so those stand out more prominently than our reference sight lines. And then you can go ahead and start putting in some of the detail. So you can start kind of roughing in the texture on the ball, for example, the lip of the vase up at the top. You can start thinking about cast shadow. Remember that cast shadow, even though we think of it in terms of value, obviously, it also is something that we have to represent, especially when using graphite, in terms of a shape, in terms of a contour line to create it in the drawing. So you can see you can go ahead and pencil in those cast shadows. Then we're going to start applying value all over. So this is when we need to be aware of our light source. Our light source in this case is coming from the left and above. So the top left part of the ball is going to be the lightest, and that widest middle left part of the vase is going to be our lightest value area, and then obviously the cast shadows are to the right. So you can add in your value, and then you just kind of keep refining, and voila. Okay, so that's sort of a walkthrough of how to do sighting and how to translate that sighting into mapping to help get your proportions and relationships between your objects more accurate. Okay.